Now, see, it says live, but that was way too quick. And I guess the lag is on the YouTube side, not our side.
Yeah, I think we're good.
I'm here with Alexei Novitzki. I still want to pronounce your name. I want to say Alexei, but I hear other people say, and you even said your name one time was Alexei.
Well, I say like Alexei
Okay.
Novitzki. However you want to do it, it's all good.
Well, I consider you friend, and I don't want to mispronounce your name. So,
I appreciate that.
Anyway, I'm here with Alexei Novitzki, who I'm really starting to like a lot because he's a smart guy, and I like to surround myself with smart people. Someday it'll rub off on me, I hope. But this is sort of an impromptu discussion, and I did want to invite what we could if somebody ends up watching and they want to join us to ask questions. How about that? We could do that.
Yeah,
that would be kind of interesting. I've never done that before. That might be kind of interesting. But Alexei, did you finish? When did you write The Physics of Love, your new book?
Well, I started writing earlier this month. Basically, kind of started getting the premises of it, but then basically finished it up over the last 2 days.
You realize I've been writing my book, The Artisan Philosophy, for like 7 years. So that's pretty good.
Well, I've been thinking about this stuff for a long time. It's always been on mind, coming around, coming back, and then
you know what's happened to me though is there's a chapter in my book about spirituality, and because I talk about all the aspects of what I think artisans are, right? And then I come to this one chapter about spirituality, and I'm thinking, what? Okay, should I even include this chapter? You know what I mean? It like stumped me. And this was like I said, I swear, I started this book a long time ago. It must be almost 10 years ago. So I've got it almost, and I don't know why I'm talking about it. We're supposed to be talking about your book, but I'm just impressed with how fast you wrote it.
Well, thank you. That. I mean, it's not the biggest book in the world. It's 44 pages, and it stems from the other, you could say, 7 books that I've written. Mm-hmm. So it's basically applications of it, as well as potential future kind of thing that's happening right now too. So I could just go ahead and start, just so I'm not.
No, please do. I'm gonna.
Okay, cool.
You don't like it when I put you on the big screen, right?
Oh, I don't really mind. I'm gonna be putting a share screen on anyway. So
okay, I'm gonna put you.
I just want to show this first.
Okay.
Can you see that? Yeah.
Yeah. Let me put me over. Let's put this over here. There we go. Yeah, that's nice.
So basically, this is. I don't know if this is the exact cover of it, but it's going to be something very similar to this. And it's called The Physics of Love. And the premises of it is that we're all having different experiences within a 5-dimensional vortex. And each one of our wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations basically creates a delusion within this fluid of experience. And and so from there we'll move forward, right? So that's kind of like the premises. And there's different regions. There's laminar flows, and there's also turbulent flows. And turbulent flows relate to karmic cycles of delusion, and laminar flows relate to basically being in your golden spot of manifestation and always drifting closer to, you could say, harmony. So
for people who haven't heard the term laminar flow before, talk about that. That's sort of the flow of sort of the ether, I guess.
Yeah, if you wanted to consider it the flow, exactly the flow of the ether. Like I always like to compare it to a river because people are familiar with a river.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So some sections of a river are very smooth and flowing. Meanwhile, other sections have a lot of rapids and white waters and turbulent regions.
I think about you every time I go by Suck Creek. We have a creek here that feeds into the Tennessee River. It's called Suck Creek. And at one point in the river, the flow of it causes a vortex.
Right.
That boats have to avoid. So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's a great analogy because basically you could say that we'll get into it towards the end, but that our entire experience of our universe was tugged into one of those little vortexes, and now it's coming out back into the greater laminar flow. So that's just something to think about, because we have our universe exists within this bigger flow of reality, basically. Do you see that I'm trying to do a share there?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll pay better attention. Here we go.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
So this is basically the book, though, and just so people get an idea that haven't seen my work before, you have we live in a 5-dimensional field of energy, and our conscious experiences are basically being manifested from it. And so right here, you can see this could be considered the center of your experience. And from there, based off of our accelerative reference frame, so we're accelerating towards the center of time at light speed, but we're flying tangential, and we're slowly drifting inward, gaining higher harmonics of conscious density. Okay, so based on that, we have experiences, and our experiences look like this through that 5th-dimensional field.
What are the two different spheres? The colors coded. What are those?
The red and the blue, you mean, or?
Yeah, the color coding. What?
I just did that here. So basically, if you wanted to say the green is before it's even being experienced by us, and then as we start to experience something, it comes into our future. So you would say that energy from the center of time is being crunched, energy on the outside is being stretched away. And then as it leaves our now moment, it's bigger, but it's still within our perception. Energy from the outside of time is actually being crunched and being stretched away. And so then after it leaves our perception, it returns back to normal. So matter, as far as human perception and consciousness and accepted physics, matter and light are only differentiated when perceived by a conscious entity or experienced or related to another type of matter, essentially. And so you have inner rings of perception and you have outer rings of perception, right? And so from there, you have different orbits within this fluid of time. And so I don't have it on this drawing here, but there's a habitable spiral of perception. And based off your location, there's habitable rings of perception.
Even though it's not shown there, there's pathways to the inner circles, right?
Yes. It basically is kind of constantly drifting inward as we're kind of going.
It's not a constant radius, and something you have to make an effort to pass to the next.
Not as far as I see it, but there might be, and they might be. I actually kind of talk about that right here, the relationship to expanding and contracting universe. Because as our experience of this 5th-dimensional vortex, as we drift closer to center, you would notice that the gravitational field would be getting bigger. And so relating that to this drawing, you would see that matter would continue to get more and more dense, and light would continue to stretch more and more and more. So basically, the size of the universe gets bigger and matter becomes more dense. But once you hit basically a point where you're at the factor of 2 times the speed of light, as far as acceleration towards center, you might actually experience like a second Big Bang, like another shedding of black holes as you enter that density of experience. So each one of those rings could even potentially be related to basically a shell, but it's hard to say without actually seeing it or being there. Yeah.
But are you saying that matter is being created as it becomes condensed, or it's being condensed, or we're just perceiving it as being condensed?
Well, we're experiencing it as being condensed, so that's the same as perceiving it. The experience of it, the feeling, the relationships.
Well, you can perceive something that isn't true, right? Or is that not? Am I thinking wrong there?
Well,
your perception is one thing, right?
Perception is related to motion. And so based off of the motion that you have, say I could be in the same spot, you could be in this, we could have 10 people in the same exact spot, but having different motions through it. And based off their motions, they would have a different stretching and crunching of the matter. So it really relates to which direction they're accelerating towards center.
Merry Christmas, R&R
Merry Christmas.
from Colorado. Do y'all have snow yet in Colorado? Well, it's all. This is fascinating to me. I wonder why. What is the closest thing? What other human has something that's even remotely close to this idea? Or you're? It's not. It's a. This is a
I don't know. I've kind of made, not made this up. I've sat in meditation for a long time. I have my bachelor's in astrophysics and physics, and this is
Oh,
basically,
I didn't mean to insinuate that. I just meant it's just so different. It's certainly not what we were taught in school. So
no,
it's very interesting.
it is. And what I just keep finding more and more fascinating is how much, the more I continue to write, the more it just ends up being like ancient Egyptian knowledge and technologies.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It
Yeah.
seems so natural to me when even though I don't completely understand it, as you explain it, it's almost like it's something that is true that we know. We're just being reintroduced to it or something.
Well, I think there might be a reason why. And as we get to the end of the book, you'll see that it relates a lot to like the UAP phenomenon picking up and all that.
Hmm.
But so we've gotten to laminar flow already and turbulent flow, so we know about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then based off of that, that we're in this kind of this fluid of quantum, the ether is a good way of putting it, the fluid of time. And so there's a series of synchronizations that needs to occur as all of our, you could say, experiences are manifested. So we're all having experiences, and we all have our own wants, don't wants, assumptions and expectations. And so all of our experiences are being manifested from this 5-dimensional flow. And based off of our conscious harmonics is which layer we're perceiving. And so that relates. I'm kind of moving quickly through this part because this is more of the old book stuff, like the last book.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, as you drift in, well, this is kind of important. So as you drift inward, you see that conscious experiences become denser and denser and denser. And so if you wanted to harmonize your consciousness to a different layer of reality, you need to create, essentially a magnetic vortex that harmonizes, you could say, the universe to the noviverse. And that has to do with the expansion of space as well as the twisting of space. So basically a magnetic vortex.
I guess our normal operation is somewhere between the outer and the second. Can you blow
Well,
that up again?
that's yeah. I mean, if check this one out real quick. So I just call it the universe.
Oh, there you go. There, I was looking at the hertz, and I know what do we operate on between 8 and 16 or something. Our brains.
Yeah, or alpha. That's on this next one.
I'm sorry. I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to
No,
listen.
no. Well, I mean, I wasn't going to show this, but since you asked, so right here you have alpha is 9 to 13, beta is 14 to 30, and so I just used alpha at 10 as my center. If you wanted to be more realistic, based off of the numbers that we found, or I found, whatever, doing my math, 1.25 could be the starting point for the delta, and then 2.5 would actually be like a second realm within delta. And then you would go 5, 10, 20, 40, 80.
That's easy to remember too.
Yeah, and each one of those is associated with a cloud diameter. Because if we're in this, basically a black hole vortex, 1 hertz means that the energy rotates around 1 time per second. And so if it's accelerating towards center at light speed, you use A equal to V squared over R, and you know that 2 pi R over D is equal to your time. And you can basically do math, and you get your cloud diameters for each orbit, right? So these are all the different orbits that exist of those frequencies if you're considering acceleration towards center at light speed, which is what I call the dimension of conscious density. And so basically from there, you see that there's all these different layers of experience that exist within time itself. Okay, so that's the premises. That's like the framework. From there, you realize that your body is actually being manifested from there. And so you create the mind, body, and spirit diagrams. And this talks about how, because now you need to imagine like you're sitting perfectly still, and to even move your body within space and time, it starts off typically with some type of thought. So the easiest way to think of it is there's an outside thought comes into play. Based off of that, you get a shifted body, which also shifts your light state harmony, which what you could say is literally your quantum manifestation with the incoming energy. So you get a shifted spirit. And that literally creates a new node of manifestation. Like if I'm talking about grabbing a cup of water, literally I'm sitting still, everything's perfect. And then all of a sudden I start thinking I would like to get water. And so my body harmonizes to the action, to the physical experience of me going and getting water. And so that creates each one of those wants, don't wants, assumptions and expectations is somewhat of an experience that you're creating, or a twisting of this fluid of time. And that there's a spiraling back to center as those thoughts dissolve away from being part of your harmony or part of your wants. And so basically from that, you see that there's the fluid of experience, and we all have these vortexes we're creating while we're existing within it. From there, it moves into the different habitats that even exist within our 5-dimensional experience. And basically, each one of these could be considered a delusion of sorts. And the furthest you'll be able to see into time is based off of your spiral that you exist within, that your consciousness exists within. And so what I say in the book, though, is basically you can imagine the green spirals relating to like an addictive habit. And so the furthest you'll ever see into time is to the end of that spiral. Or if you're only connected to this red spiral, for example, you could say that's going to school and coming back, right? So that's the day. And so there's different spirals of conscious perception that you can exist within. And while you're existing within those, that's as far as you can actually see. And so as you remove delusions, you actually start experiencing a bigger and bigger reality. We go further into it later on in the book, but that's just a good way to start now. You know, is that making sense right now?
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were talking about like habits, like you have the daily routine, and then you have habits. I wonder how habits, like if I have the habit of, this is probably just overthinking it, but I wonder how I have a routine. I get up, I go to work, and I come back home. You were talking about that spiral being the day. I wonder I guess you can affect those spirals by changing your habits.
Yeah,
Those days.
Yeah, so basically, I get into that in a little bit. So we get into that right now. So basically, once you realize that you do have this mind, body, spirit system that is your manifestation within this fluid, you learn to take postures. And I've been going back to martial arts as far as describing the best way of taking postures, because you can take a posture in mind, you can take a posture in body, and you can also take a posture in spirit. And what most people are familiar with is taking postures in body. So like standing on one foot, or, like reaching towards the sky, something like that. But when it comes to taking a posture in mind, that could be like walking around with an assumption that all Democrats are the best, or all Republicans are the best, or because I'm this race, I need to act like this, or because I have this much money, this is how reality is supposed to be. For me, I don't know if that makes sense. So basically, you learn that you take postures in mind,
Right.
posture in body, and you can also take posture in spirit. And you could call that your ego or your light state harmony. And by use of the ego, you can essentially use it as a steering wheel to guide yourself out of the smaller fractals of delusion.
That's kind of what I was. That's what I was envisioning in my mind with the habit, the habitual, Anyway, yeah, that's where I was kind of going with that. I couldn't come up with a proper term for it.
Right.
Posture is a good term.
Yeah. So basically, that's what I call the line of sight. Is how far you can see is literally what fractal of delusion you're existing within. Like if you're, you've had an addictive habit, that's as far as you can see. If you're stuck within an infrastructure, even like a forced infrastructure you're born into, that's as far as you can see. And so by removal of delusion from your consciousness, you're literally able to see bigger and bigger flows of reality.
We were talking about this before we started. How
Right.
I was saying, I was joking around that I wanted to have a better container the next time around.
Right.
And you mentioned something about, well, I'm just perceiving that and I was like, no, I'm my container's different from yours. So anyway, I thought that was interesting.
Well, so I mean, then it keeps going, right? So like, we now know that we can take postures in mind, body, and spirit, and we know that people can get caught into spirals of delusion. And so what we have here is basically healing through what I call posture control. So knowing how you control your mind, body, spirit spirals and vortexes that you create within the energy, you can literally create healing within other people. And so this comes down to like, healing of all sorts of things, healing of the body, healing of the mind, and healing of the spirit. You can help walk people back to what I call the golden spot of manifestation, which is essentially your natural node of creation that you exist in before you are experiencing any delusion. And so I guess this is just, I'll blow this up real quick. So this is an example of someone canceling the pacing based off of their mind, body, and spirit. The energy they put out basically creates a stillness within the person next to them and helps them connect to the greater flow of reality.
Are those waves sort of canceling each other, or?
Yeah, exactly. In this example, they're offset by, they're the complete opposite. So they've completely canceled each other and they both go perfectly back to zero. And what that does is when you cancel your pacing, it will connect you to the greatest flow of reality. So now your consciousness will exist within the bigger flow. So as you start to cancel the different pacings associated with the karmic delusions that exist within our 4-dimensional space, but being manifested from a 5D, you can bring everyone closer to harmonizing and synchronizing as one greater conscious experience. And so this is just an example here. I call this the golden path, you could say, or the golden spiral. And now let's talk about someone basically, this could be your life. You start off and you're born here, and let's say you never once experienced doubt or a delusion, anything that would basically not be long lasting. This is essentially, you could say in quotes, a perfect life without doubt, or being born into a fractal of a delusion, right? You've drifted perfectly to center the entire time. But since we're all human, we all make mistakes. This is a more realistic picture of a mind, body, spirit complex throughout their life. And so you could say that you're born here and then you go to school, and now you have to conquer the experience of school before your mind, body, spirit can continue to evolve and get closer to your golden spot. And so this could be like another situation that keeps coming up that you have to conquer to get back to zero before you can evolve further. Is that making sense to you right now?
It makes a lot of sense. I just wonder what's interesting is that if you were the Dalai Lama and you were like on the first one that you showed, that's why he and I'm not claiming.
Well, we can get to him.
I don't claim that that's his graph, but I'm saying that people like him, other people don't understand those types of people.
What you just said describes it perfectly. Yeah, I mean, someone like the Dalai Lama probably has something very similar to this one.
Yeah, and that's why we look at them as if they're strange or different, or because they don't suffer the delusions as much as we do.
Right. And so we were born with these delusions in a 5-dimensional vortex. And, some people always call it like your flower, or how you're blossoming in the fluid of experience. And so like literally these delusions, they don't help you grow at all, and they don't last. They always dissolve away. As far as like the greater now moment, this won't exist. These won't exist. These won't exist. They're all going to dissolve away.
When you said flower, I thought of, no, it's the thorns on a cactus.
Yeah, it's very similar. And so this is another example. And I like, so there's like a big branch coming off the side. So that could be like committing yourself to like a religious institution for your entire life, or some type of government job, or
Very interesting.
any greater fractal of a delusion that you're really not connected to the greatest flow of reality. So you literally cannot evolve further until you get connected to the greater flow of reality. But
what happens when you have a mass, what seems to me to be mass delusions among, because right now, I remember when I was younger, we didn't seem to have, you had individuals, but it seems like there are now like whole groups who are joining in on the same delusion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we kind of get. Here, let me see your face. I can't see you right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting it. I'm in the control room. Here we go.
We can just leave it like this, probably.
Okay, I was just trying to blow up the graphics.
I think it'll be okay like this. I mean, I'll do the page width, and we'll be all right.
Okay.
But basically, so the whole concept here in the physics of love is helping everyone return to zero, a point of true creation, to where like the things that they do in their life will be long lasting and everlasting. Because when you're creating from a fractal of delusion, basically it leads your manifestation out here. And when it comes to health, that basically means you're going to start becoming sick. Because you could say that when you're in the golden spot, that's a perfect manifestation of your body. But if you're existing off center, now you're literally undergoing a strain, like you've stressed the universe. That creates strain within your quantum manifestation, which creates disease and the replication of your DNA. I mean, that's the easiest way to put it. And so like, by being on the golden path, you have the greatest health as well. And so the idea is by using your knowledge of your mind, body, and spirit, you can use posture control to help walk people to the greater flows of reality. So I call that returning to zero. And so you can just kind of compare these two flowers. You could say this is one that's created. This is someone more like the Dalai Lama, right? They've created from their zero on all of their incarnation. Every time they have a creation, they return to zero. And what that means is after every action, they've returned to zero. Every thought, every want, every action of mind, body, or spirit, they've returned to zero before doing the next one. So that's like a perfect, you could say, crystal within the fluid of time. And so you can compare, something like this, right? Which would be like, you're saying like the Dalai Lama, versus something like this, which is probably, me and you, your
normal human. Yeah.
Your average human.
I wonder what happens if you, I guess it doesn't really matter, but it's still interesting to me how it seems like, I think, I'm one of those people that really, I get in trouble for this too. I don't think we have rights. I think we have responsibilities, and it's our responsibility to put ourselves on that path, right?
It is.
There's no one in control of that path except you.
Exactly. You control every single motion you make in mind, in body, and in spirit. And every time you could say that's what I actually call it like ego steering. You use your ego to steer yourself through the delusion to connect to the greater flow, right? So you got to like basically see which flow of reality you're actually existing within. Is it a fractal of someone or something's delusion? If so, use your knowledge to remove yourself from it, right? I mean, that's the way I see it.
And
Um,
I honestly think that the idea of how we got to this point where we have religious and political and other genres of delusions is that we have allowed ourselves to think along the terms of not having that responsibility. You know,
yeah, it has.
we say we have rights, but and then we talk about paper that creates the rights, but really what we have are the responsibility to stay on that path.
Well, that's the thing too, is when you get into being born into so much infrastructure, you're literally born into one of these delusions. When you're born into a culture, you're born into the culture of the United States of America here. You're born into the culture of China over here, or you're born
Right.
into the culture of Russia. And so
And it,
that's going along the lines of what you're saying, right? Like,
yeah, and then there's political systems within those cultures.
exactly. They're all
Yeah.
different fractals of a greater delusion. Like, come on, we're all human. To just be as real as possible in the physical, we're all human on Earth, right?
And I honestly think that it's going at some point in our future, maybe it's 1,000 years, that how long would it take to get people to understand this?
I think it can happen a lot quicker than,
But
so one might think.
you really
Eh,
you have more faith in humanity than I do.
I do, and I think if you kind of just so this all came from a powerful like I've said, powerful series of visions. And even after I finished writing it, I kind of just heard in my head, go outside, look up, and you can see the craft kind of thing. And so I did, and fair enough, there was a shooting star that shot off straight to the east. So when it comes to the UAP phenomenon, I think that this could be some type of indicator. Hey, you guys might want to pay attention. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't
Yeah,
have dedicated so much time if it wasn't important. Um, but
I think philosophy is really important, and it can help us guide ourselves away from the delusions that we find ourselves in. You know,
yeah,
I mean, this helps me because just seeing it and hearing it, but it seems so natural once you really put your mind to it. You know.
yeah. I mean, so to just kind of keep going forward, and I guess you kind of already hit the nail on the head with the hammer with the Dalai Lama. I think that's a perfect example. You have this golden flower in a way, or right here, and then you have what I call densities of creation. And so literally, when you look at this structure up top here, different parts of your body are being manifested from different orbits within this fluid of experience, because inside is where denser objects come from and outside is where less dense objects come from. And when you consider all of time and all of your manifestations through this fluid, you could see that it almost creates like a wave that's popping in and out of existence. And so if you have that golden flower structure throughout all your manifestations, you literally create something like this, which is what I call a golden chain. And this relates to the concept of interdimensional alignment. So this would be literally the Dalai Lama's perfect incarnations coming back every time after a series of experiences through that raw energy of experience, the 5D vortex. So you get what I'm saying there, right?
Yes, and I'm sorry. I was taken away for a second from something Barrett, my son, said. He and I have this debate about the rights and responsibilities thing going. I'm sorry, I was reading, but yes, to answer your question.
Yeah, so basically you could say that would be like a perfect reincarnated being throughout all the lives. And then you could say this would be someone who basically never really reached their golden spot throughout their life, right? And so I think one good way to compare these two reincarnated beings is to think of them as almost like an electrical wire, right? And the one we're looking at right now is very, you could say, rusty. It doesn't have a really good connection because all these are different. They're all branching from different places. They kind of go out. There's a little bit of overlap, but they don't really know what they want or what they're doing. So it creates a lot of turbulence within that whole bigger structure of the fluid of time. And when you go to this other one, right, this is like this makes a really, really good wire. And so,
oh yeah, so it carries energy.
right, so it carries energy better, but also information, as far as like being able to remember experiences from past and future lives. And so you could say that by always manifesting from zero, not only do you have like a more solid and crystallized foundation, but literally you carry your energy through the different lives of existence and experience.
Yeah, when you said wire, I was looking at it improperly because the energy is being created in each little vortex, right?
Right.
Or from the 0 point or whatever.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
then when you just want to think about how just energy transfers, like think of it as a solid structure in that fifth dimensional flow. Like this one doesn't have as good of a connection. But what's interesting is that changing your now moment affects your future. Sorry, and it affects your future, but it also affects your past. So by creating a more stable now, you've literally made a more stable past and future for yourself.
Can I explain something right quick about what I was talking about?
Yeah.
Right, to Barrett. I don't want him to think that I know because he and I've had this discussion before. I don't think you have uh, rights. It's just that I want the reason I stressed that to especially you and my own children was that to stress the responsibility side of it instead of the rights side. And I use the example of putting yourself in the jungle and then questioning the rights that you have, or trying to document the rights you have. Go to the jungle or the desert and then preach about rights. You don't have any rights. you have a responsibility to survive. Right. So anyway, I didn't mean to get off on a tangent. I don't want anybody or Barrett thinking I don't mean, because he said you have to have rights to give you, basically in our form of government, you need, written rights. And that's true. And in that delusion, in that delusion that we've created in that political system, you have rights. I don't think you have to have them. I think we do. It's like stating a fact. There are rights that have been created for that delusion, for that political system. But you have a responsibility to stay on, keep your mind and heart and spirit on track. And that's my point. I'm sorry. I just wanted Barrett to understand I wasn't saying we don't have rights necessarily, even though I did say it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I got off track. I went off on a tangent.
No, well, I mean, we do have rights, right? Like, I mean, there is, like you just said, there's natural law. But like
natural law is not as
they shouldn't even be like have to be said though. Like, don't hurt, do right, do good, try to help people. Like, I think that natural law, it shouldn't even, it's like self-explanatory, and that people live in fear almost because of like the things that they try to live up to. I don't know.
Right, and we have a responsibility to honor natural law. It's not. My point is, it's not something you can put on paper. It's in paper. You can put it down on paper, but that written right is part of a political system. It's part of It's the delusion that we've created that there is a thing called a constitutional republic. Right. To me, that's the delusion.
Yeah, I mean, that is one. That would be a fractal of the delusion. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying.
No, yeah, I'm
kind of agreeing with. I'm kind of.
I always think the skate case is a fractal of my delusion. Like 100%. Yeah, I mean, that's like I'm not trying to. It's not a mean thing to say that it's a delusion. It is. It is something that.
And that's kind of why I'm bringing it up, is because I remember the first time I heard you use the term delusion, I got it like really quick. I was like, "That's really cool." Remember? And I thought to myself, some people are not going to get that. They're going to
they get offended.
Yeah,
because they're not delusional, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm not delusional because I went to the Capitol on the 6th and rampaged. Right. I'm not. That's not a delusion.
No,
it actually is a delusion.
Almost. So that just to relate it back to this book or whatever, like the whole like kind of series and concepts. Every one of these vortexes that are created with the mind, body, spirit are a delusion. Every single one of these vortexes could be considered some sort of delusion.
The fact that I supported Trump in the first place is a delusion.
But
But you see that I'm taking it. I am trying to be objective about it. You see, and I think to have a healthy mind, you have to be objective, and you have to be able to analyze yourself.
Right. That's the thing too. If you are so caught up in your own self or whatever, the second you hear someone say that's a delusion, you're going to be offended.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. You'll be offended.
And it's going to keep you from becoming. It's going to keep you from healing your own mind.
Right.
You're going to continue to be in any sort of delusion.
Well,
numbers of delusions.
Well, that's the thing too. Is like all those have kind of been shooken up, right? Everyone's kind of like let me just, I guess if we keep moving forward, we'll get to that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I told you I went off on a tangent.
No, you're good. So people talk about seeds, right? What is it? Star seeds? And that's the thing people say, oh, it's a star seed.
Remember I said that about you when I first met you.
Yeah, just we don't want to define what I am just yet, but basically, you could say that what I do is I relate. So here I just talk about seed crystals in general. And I don't know if you've ever seen a silicone wafer being made, like for computer chip.
I have.
Yeah, so they get like a batch of liquid silicone, and then they drop in a perfect crystal, right? And then they pull it out of this molten batch, and out comes this perfect crystal.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I have seen the wafers made for solar panels. I'm sorry. You were talking about computer chips.
Right, like the raw silicone wafer before they do like the lithography, the resin work on it, I know cool. I did a course once where I was in a clean lab making CMOS transistors on chips. So like I was playing with computer chips and doing like the photolithography. I forget exactly what it's called, but basically that's how they make the wafers, right? And so now let's relate this to human population. But before I do that, though, I go into the concept of cleansing hitchhikers. So we've talked about the hitchhiker phenomenon as well, right? How like different spirals of energy are literally like habitats within time for different beings to exist within. And so like places like Skinwalker Ranch, you could say, have a lot of magnetic vortices, which give a lot of different crunch and stretch ratios, which allow human consciousness to interact with different realms of experience. Easiest way to put it. And then so basically, if you wanted to cleanse hitchhikers by connecting to the greater flows of reality, you can do that as well. And so just to kind of keep moving through the book, we have the next section is called Hurricanes Within the Luge. So the Luge is the raw energy of experience, right? And each one of your mind, body, spirit projections creates, you could say, a tornado or a hurricane within it. And an easy way to think about it too, is that when a hurricane's over the water, it creates like a pressure difference in the water.
Mm-hmm.
And so each one of these spirals could have a certain depth to it. And so depending on your spiral is how far you can literally see again. And so as you remove delusion, you basically get higher and higher up, and you can help people see the greater picture, meaning all the different realms of experience. And so the next section here is called Great Cycles in Relationship to Orbiting Universes, right? And from Time Atom, what we realize is that there's cycles, as in dimensional alignments that happen every so often. And I have a chart right here that has all the dimensional alignments. And basically, if you wanted to like do one dimensional shift, for every 1 second that passes here in our universe, 1 hour would pass in the dimension inward. 2 dimension shifts, 185 days. 3-dimensional shifts, you get 2,029 years. 4-dimensional shifts, you get 8.1 million years. And so that's looking inward, but it's also the same going outward, right? So we have an alignment with the ring outside of us every hour. We have alignment with the ring that's 2 away every 185 days, and we have an alignment with the ring that's 3 away every 2029 years. So that is talking about dimensional alignments within that quantum 5-dimensional vortex. And then so when you think about reincarnated beings, right, and you're talking about dimensional alignments, and we're talking about seeding the human population and molten materials, what we notice right now, where we are as in the state of human society, kind of like what we were just talking about, how there's a lot of different clusters of conscious creation at this moment. Like there's a lot of different families, there's a lot of different cultural views. And so one way to think about it is that we have something like this going on, where literally like you have 2 families separated. This is one house, and then this is the house next to you, but they're completely separated as far as cultural views, expectations. Each one is literally living in a fractal of its own delusion. And so to more draw that out in a 3-dimensional view, you could say our state of humanity is more like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's that flower or fractal analogy again. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is like every single human on the planet Earth right now. And we're not harmonized at all, right? We're all living in our own fractals of delusion. And so just to relate this to what they've been talking about as far as UAPs coming from the denser realms of experience, and also earlier in the book, we realized that our stillness is literally what creates the fluid of experience for denser harmonics. So basically, we're water within the dimension that's bigger, but we're the fluid of time for the dimension that's inner, is a really easy way of thinking about it. And so our stillness literally creates the flows of space for denser harmonics to evolve. And so if our stillness looks like this, then literally intelligence that's older cannot exist. Denser experiences cannot evolve, and they cannot exist because we have disturbed, not we, but the mind, body, spirit distortions of the now have disturbed the future. Because there's only a now moment. Okay. And so we all rise in quotes and fall as one. And so now let's think about the current state of, well, I talk, so the next thing I do is I talk about grain size in relationship to cooling rates. So the longer it takes for something to cool, the bigger the grains become. But that's not really that important. That's just kind of like a physics thing. But so now let's talk about fluid perceptions.
What are the grains related to?
The grains are related to different, you could say, delusions. Each grain would be a different delusion within the crystal of time, and we all have these different perceptions of reality, and we're all very right. So one way to think of it is like up here on the top left, where you literally have just 2 different grains in a crystal. But a more realistic view is this 5-dimensional view here, where you have all these different spirals of delusion trying to overlap and synchronize, and they're trying to create a fluid experience, but they can't because they're so delusional. So it's like this needs to harmonize. This structure right here needs to harmonize in order for all of us to get along and move as one being. And so it comes down to basically grains needing to become molten, right? Because if you want to create a perfect crystal within the fluid of time, you need to melt the material first. Is one way to think of it. Right, so you want to melt the material, and then you want to dip in a seed crystal and raise it, and have all the material crystallize as that new material. And so when it comes to relating it to, this is very modern, and this is very current information, you could say, as of a few days ago.
Just off the press.
Hot off the press, yeah.
Off the press.
So here, this is basically kind of what we have going on, as in like our state of existence, where we have the outer realms of experience, and it becomes somewhat biblical at this point, where it's like literally these are like the outer realms of our creation. You could almost say like God would be the biggest ring out in the distance, and then it basically just becomes more and more dense until it's our experience. Now it's at the point where our stillness is what's creating the environment for the denser beings of experience. And so just to relate that to those time cycles and dimensional alignments and the potential of dipping a seed crystal into reality, you could say that what's been happening recently in our current state of reality is that we've been having a dissolving of all of our delusions. We kind of all grew up being raised and that we would have all these different expectations and things, and with all the different happenings that have existed on the earth, there's been a lot of dissolving of people's expectations. There's been a lot of dissolving of assumptions. There's been a lot of dissolving of wants and don't wants, right? I know a lot of people wanted to go on vacation at the start of COVID, but they haven't been able to. Now they're cool with not going. Basically what I'm trying to get at is that our mind, body, spirit complexes have somewhat been dissolving and becoming molten, right? Fluid to a point where they're able to perceive and digest new information. The latest release, you could say, being, well, just to go through here, I basically say that it started around December 21st, 2012.
12.
Yeah, with the economic crisis, that we had going on. And then it's hard for me to find the actual page right now. Let me see.
Well, you were just there.
Here it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is now basically talking about, I should have made a different drawing for this, but a pacing of our entire experience through that laminar and fluid zones. And so you could say that our entire experience was tugged out of a laminar flow in order to create some type of recrystallization. And so you could say when that happened, we had a branching of all of our experiences. So basically, there's a dimensional alignment that happens every somewhat 2,000 years. And we were talking about that earlier, as those dimensions align with each other. And so as that dimension aligned with our experience, it literally tugs on it and creates a pacing of our experience of the universe through the raw energy of experience, raw fluid of time.
Is there any correlation between these time periods, between those and astronomical events?
They're directly related.
Okay.
So the last one had to do with the coming of the Pisces, the Pisces. So the age of the fish, ushered in by Jesus, symbolized by the Star of David on the top of the Great Pyramid, right? So that was basically the 2,029 years ago, and so that just just so happens to relate with that and upcoming events.
Huh.
It's just interesting, and
Oh, it is interesting, and it just occurred to me that that it wouldn't necessarily have to be. There wouldn't necessarily have to be a correlation, right? If we are somehow creating the delusions as we go along, it could be that our assumptions on astrological events are also something that we've created, right? Because we created those Libra, Pisces, we created those images in the sky from those star systems, right?
Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, I think modern human has no clue what they really relate to.
No, I agree. That's kind of my point. I think.
Yeah.
We try to relate it to something.
Yeah. But that's like where
we take earthly figures and apply it to.
Well, it's like the flat Earth theory. I mean, to even just go into that real quick, it really depends on your view, right? Like clearly we have this we live in this three-dimensional space where the Earth is round and we go out to space and we orbit the Earth, right? So how could the Earth be flat? Well, in this fifth dimensional view, basically all of our projections exist within a flat sheet, and there's a 25-mile sphere. There's
Please
inner
don't
and
give
outer
them any
rings.
credit. Please don't justify their existence.
It's bad, but it's.
I'm just kidding.
No, I didn't want to. I never wanted to.
I'm kidding because I understand what you're saying, but they will just think you're justifying.
Well, I'm justifying both of them at this point. Where we do have a four-dimensional space, and then the flat earthers are. They have no idea.
But that's not what they're claiming. They're not claiming that, though. I understand.
No, they're not claiming we live in a five-dimensional space. They're saying our Earth is physically flat.
Right.
No, see, that's
right.
No.
And that's all I'm saying is that they're going to say, "Oh, look, Alexei, thank you." You know.
No, but that's the point, though. Is like once you actually understand this view of reality, it almost circles back to that, which is somewhat disturbing, right? Not really disturbing, but it's like, oh, very eye-opening. Well, our beta universe exists within a 25-mile sphere. There's inner and outer rings of perception. People that experience the 80 bits in their brain talk about seeing elves from inner Earth. So it's like when you talk about that whole thing, there's huge relationships. But what I'm talking about now, I guess, is so we just basically saw that this is our current five-dimensional layer of all of humanity. If you want to consider all of humanity as one conscious crystal, this is what we look like. We're very grainy. This, you could say, is our experience. The outer realms are very clean, very pure. But then as you get to where we exist, it's very grainy. And so there needs to be an alignment in order for the denser harmonics of experience to evolve and to be able to continue to exist. And so basically it goes into showing that all of our personal mind, body, spirit diagrams right here in the middle have become dissolved through what did that say?
Do you think the ease of communication with smartphones and social media has a lot to do with the people's lives becoming entwined? I guess what he's asking is, earlier you were talking about how the melding of the delusions. I guess he's asking, are those physical things, the communication, is that have to do with people's lives becoming entwined?
Yeah, I think it helps, but that's where I think that it also, in a way, doesn't help, because more focus gets put onto the responses that exist. I wrote a poem about this, actually, talking about how we really don't need the internet because we're already tapped into the greatest flow of reality. And by thinking we need the internet now, we're removing ourselves into another delusion. So I would almost say that all of this technology, because people are unaware, or not everyone is aware of their mind, body, spirit postures. They're unaware that they're removing the connection, the interconnection that they have with the earth, and now they're focusing more on this internet.
It's a conundrum, really, because we can use the internet to communicate with people, and then part of that communication might be that the internet is a delusion.
Well, the internet is a fractal of a delusion.
Right. And so you're like, well, which one is it? Well, it's both.
Well, I remember growing up, it was okay just to kind of like walk over and knock on your neighbor's door. But not only that, you knew more of the flow of everyone in your day. And people were way more aware of where people would be and things they were doing. Now it's like you have to check in and ask if it's okay. I'm not saying it's bad to ask for permission, but there's a lot more uncertainty involved with it. And so you could say there's a lot more doubt that gets instilled because of it. You're not sure. So a lot more insecurity basically comes from people being less connected to the flow of reality and more connected to what they want to see on their phones. Because the phone is just like literally a piece of metal in your hand, and you're like looking outward and trying to get answers from outward, as opposed to looking to inward and connecting to the golden spot. You're connecting to fractals of delusion. So in that sense, I think they're actually extremely unhealthy. but I don't know, right?
Right. And that's where mass delusions come from.
They do. I mean, that's
Right. The
how like.
ease of communication.
But as far as liquefying of the mind, body, spirit crystal that have been created, I think that they've had a great part to do with it, right? Because if you're talking about instilled delusions being liquefied, um, you're talking about things like all the movements of equality that have happened, all the different, um, you could say, friction that's been created about like mask, no mask, vaccinate, like all the different things have been creating a lot more friction, have been instilled through the media and through like the accepted view of, and so what I say here though is that there's been a melting of mind, body, spirit expectations. So basically, we all somewhat solidified, just because that's what happens. We solidify. We live in fractals of delusion, and so we solidify with postures. But with all these different things that have been happening recently, you could say that our postures have been liquefying. And so now we all have a fluid mind, body, spirit state. With the latest release being that UAP are a real thing, right? I mean, that's a pretty big deal for the government to come out and say, hey, these are a real thing. But what I also make a note in here to say that the fact that humanity needed the government to say that they were a real thing shows how disconnected people were to begin with, right? The fact that we
Yeah, and
needed
they didn't say what they were. They just said they were.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the fact that the government, like people didn't believe their neighbors, right? And then
Right.
they believe
Right.
the government when it says it. It's like they're not connected to reality. You literally have a human standing next to you telling you that they're seeing, things in the sky or whatever, but you're not going to believe them.
And part of what I was saying earlier about rights versus responsibilities is that this comes into play when you have a mass communication tool like the internet. Your responsibilities become more important, right? You have to use that tool responsibly,
Right.
right?
Yeah. I mean,
Because
you don't
and
want to be,
not allow yourself to be like Reddit. To me, is the best example of this, where you have the sheep mentality, the group think, right?
yeah. I mean,
And
and it's best to have open discussion, right? And like you see so much just insecurity blown up through the computer, right? Because they're, trolls are just like, or instant, you assume a person's comment in a negative manner, right? So you see a lot of like really defensive reactions when the person's like half joking, like, oh, come on,
right.
calm down. I was just kind of joking. Sorry, I even communicated to you, buddy, um, kind of thing.
Yeah, I have to admit, I do talk to people like people that I know me, and so they know sometimes I'm being like sarcastic or something, or fun, or trying to be funny, but
Right.
it comes across the wrong way.
Sarcasm's hard to read into, especially if
Yeah,
you're in a fractal of a delusion. You're
yeah,
experiencing some like thing of like, some trauma, and all of a sudden you get a sarcastic text. You're like, this person's a jerk, and you're done with them.
yeah, yeah, and it just compounds the delusion.
Yeah. But so just to kind of finish off the whole concept here, you see that we've had a liquefaction of mind, body, spirit distortions in this fifth dimensional field of creation, which is the creation of all of our experiences. And you can see that seed crystals are about to align, like there's a dimensional alignment with the outer ring of perception. And so you can see that it's almost like there's a dangling of a golden chain happening into a molten distortion of human consciousness, to where this is the ushering of the age of Aquarius. And you're getting something like this, to where our consciousness is about to harmonize.
That would be great if we
You,
could get to that point.
yeah, and that's literally like the part of like ascension.
And at that point, we may have the actual ability to understand UAPs or whatever, right?
Well, we wouldn't be your line of sight. So it's so hard to describe because all we have is experience, right? And as you remove layers of your delusion, you literally see a bigger picture. And the easiest way to describe it is like a worry. If you've ever worried about something or someone, you notice that the furthest you can see into time is finishing that circle of the worry. But once you finish that worry, you literally have a bigger awareness. And so each fractal delusion you live within is your line of sight. And if you're born into, you need to make money to live, you need this, you need that, people treat each other like this, you're literally, that's your line of sight. That is as far as you see. That's the best way to put it.
And there's an interesting phenomenon I have experienced with parenting, that sometimes I think there's something in our DNA, in human DNA, that doesn't allow us to completely teach our children things, right? Because I have noticed that I will, and it's almost like a lifelong experiment I have done with my children, where I have tried to teach them things over the years, and they are able to absorb some of it, but some of it is not absorbable.
It's unabsorbable. If you're in a
Yeah.
fractal of a delusion, it's almost like you can't. So I say that in the beginning. I don't really fully describe it all the way, but I call it a series of synchronizations. And so there's specific turning points, very specific points where you can basically like poke and touch and like snap someone out of a spiral of a delusion. Like,
You know
you
what
want,
made me think of it too, before I forget, was that when you said, I don't remember exactly what it was, talking about being born into a system,
right.
right? Being born into the idea that, and I've taught, I was successful with one thing with Barrett. I was able to make him understand that he is in complete control of his life, and he was going to go into teaching music. And I said, you don't have to follow that path. You can control your own destiny. And now he is, he's running his own business. He's teaching people outside. He's basically in control of his time. And that's what I've always tried to teach my kids, that you will be happier if you can remain in control of your own time.
Yep.
Right.
Well, you'll be
And
freer.
you'll be
Yeah.
freer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More free, whatever the
Yeah.
word is. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I don't know. For some reason, I'm sorry to go off on tangents, but some of the things I'm trying to give examples, because every time I hear these things, they ring so true, and it's so natural, that I don't know why more people don't think in this manner.
Well, and that has to do again with your line of sight and like how much time you actually have to think and what you're focused on, right? So people are born into these worlds, and they know they need to get money, and then basically our entire system right now, the financial system, is set up to where they basically take every penny and dollar from you.
Oh yeah. No,
Yeah, no,
I
like,
know that there are. I know that some people are, victims of other people's delusions. I'm not
right,
saying
right.
that it's that easy. I'm saying once once I feel like it's my job to help other people sometimes, to get them to at least try to expand, their mind to that point where they can start to. Because if you're stuck in that delusion, if for some reason you can't, some people can't get themselves out of it. I used to work with homeless people a lot when I was younger through Habitat. I helped start Habitat for Humanity here in Chattanooga,
Nice.
and I realized, after I left that after 2 years, because I realized that some people are stuck in that delusion.
Yeah.
They are stuck in the delusion of homelessness, and they will always be there. And that's a sad fact. But even Jesus said it: the poor will always be with us. You know,
Right. Yeah, and
you and
it's a not, I don't want to say it's a choice,
I'm not,
but
I don't mean it's a choice. Don't get me
yeah,
wrong.
no,
But
I know that. I know
but
that.
it's up to other people who have this line of sight to try to get to bring that
Well, and
to
that's where
those
we all need to
people.
rise as one.
Yeah, yeah. And
Because if
I
you're
tried.
yeah, I mean, you can do your best, but if they want to
Yeah.
keep falling into those fractals of delusion, ultimately they're the only ones that can free themselves from them.
I would hire, when I was younger. I would hire. Barrett knows this. We would go down to the soup kitchen, and I would take the guys who were waiting outside, who were homeless and wanted to work, and I would take them, and I would say, they would work for me for a while, and I would say, okay, I want to get you into the system. We'll get your social security number, all this stuff, so I can pay you legally. And the minute you say that, it's like a road bump in their delusion,
Yeah.
right? Oh, wait, I can't. And I literally had one guy say, "I'm sorry, I'm leaving town."
It's a posture, and that's what
He was
people don't know.
he was a transient, and what he would do is he would go work for people until they started to bring him out of the delusion. Then he would move on.
Right.
And we called him. He was a Vietnam vet. God bless him, Vietnam Dave. He sweated napalm. Okay, I mean, this guy was a get. Anyway, I'm sorry to be going off on these tangents so much, but I want people to hear examples, real life examples of that type of thing.
Well,
It's a reality. It's not some philosophy. It is a philosophy, but it's also based on reality.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and so when it comes to I think it's wild though, but like because once you start actually peeling those layers, like I had that very vivid meditation when I was 10 where I was literally shown like the delusions of mankind. It's like these are the delusions of mankind. It was like, wow. Very eye-opening experience. And it's like so since then it's been stay removed of delusion has always been the goal. And that's a really big challenge to stay removed of delusion, where literally people every day are telling you what you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to think, that you need this to do that, and this. We live in a very delusional.
It's a delusion based reality.
Yeah, totally. But so basically, that this then shows that. Excuse me. When it comes to like the denser harmonics of experience, and the UFO phenomenon, you could say that basically there were a lot of issues starting around nuclear warhead time, right? And like when the nuclear bombs went off and things like that. When we literally started splitting the atom, because if you wanted to literally say what happens when you split an atom, and you understand the universe to be like this. What did you just do when you split an atom?
You caused waves, but between
you literally destroyed an entire universe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
What
a tsunami.
Yeah, and so basically at the end here, what comes is you can see now how a single solid crystal of mind, body, spirit can raise the collective consciousness of an entire melted collective. The point is that with our new ability of compassion and understanding for how we influence denser experiences of creation, we can be better suited for exploring those realms. So right now, we basically we've had the capacity of going to the moon and beyond. We've somewhat had the knowledge of interdimensional technology, but what we lack is the compassion for each other and the understanding that our harmony literally creates the habitats for the denser experiences. And so in order for there to even be a denser experience, we need to be in harmony with each other. I know it sounds pretty far out there, but that's basically where this ends up going.
Well, and it allows you, if it's true, it allows you to predict things, right?
Yeah.
It allows you to predict, because the biggest question sometimes I have about UAPs or the beings is whether they're malevolent or benevolent, and if their existence is based on this harmony philosophy, then they should be benevolent and not malevolent, right?
I don't know. I think they're all good, and I think they're all.
Well, I mean, that's part of creating a philosophy or science, right? You should be able to predict things based on your.
Well, and that's why I would say that they're all trying to stay alive, and so that's to like kind of relate it again to the UAP thing, and also you could say in quotes the time war, right? Like because a lot of people say that there's different facts, like different groups striving for different things. Basically, the way I see it is they're all trying to have their habitat exist within the fluid of time.
Right. And I was kind of being facetious a little bit when I said that, because I don't, have this. I'm not sure that we're looking at something that's all that benevolent. But anyway.
No, I wouldn't say it's benevolent or malevolent. I think it's something that's more wanting to stay alive, and something that's like, so if you wanted to say benevolent, I don't know, what would you say? Stuff from out here would be benevolent. See, that's where you can't really say like in all inner rings are good, like
What I mean are, at whatever point in time and space they appear to us, how do you predict their motives or intentions, or because that's one of the things that our government's looking at, right, to be able to predict their actions.
well, and the motives, like you're saying, right? Like
Yeah, yeah. Because at some point, they have to be concerned that one day the Tic Tacs might take out a fighter jet just to make a point. You know what I mean? I don't know. There's a lot of stuff.
I don't think that. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think it's very unlikely that would ever happen.
I do too.
Yeah.
I'm saying at that. I guess what I'm saying is that based on this philosophy that you're showing me, that you should be able to predict that they wouldn't do that.
Yeah, because they'd be hurting themselves by doing that.
Hold on a second.
Yeah. It's such a weird concept, but yeah, when you see that, and it's all happening in the now. So as we become more distorted, we're literally disturbing the future experiences that can manifest in our now moment. Yeah. And so that's where it comes into the whole, like, our distortions are being liquefied, and we're having seed crystals planted in order to recrystallize the human consciousness to allow the denser experiences to continue to live. And the whole idea of we're all one, literally, like we're all one giant organism striving for harmony.
Sorry, I had a little, almost like a little allergy attack for some reason. I think it's all the dust and smoke I inhaled today.
Right. And I guess just to finish this off, I say that the greatest shifts that are going to occur, because it's basically the age of Aquarius, that's what's happening. And so the greatest shifts that are going to occur are in science and religious views, and what basically I just say at the end here is that the real connection is you to the universe, and it's not you, governmental institution or scientific view or religious infrastructure, then universe. It's you to the universe, right? Because as long as one of those remains between the two of you, you're caught in a fractal of a delusion, and the crystal will never be able to harmonize like this and gain higher densities of intelligence.
One thing I have found interesting is that when I was younger, and then as the internet came online, I met more atheists, people who were not religious, and then people who actually bashed religion, right? And then over the last 20 years or so, I have seen, especially now with this, I've seen a more acceptance of spirituality, and I don't even in science, it's starting to meld a little bit.
Yeah, well, I kind of came at it from a scientific standpoint as well, in a way. I went to school, I got degrees in physics, and I always lived in a very physical world. And then as I tried to basically explain stuff like telekinesis and things like that, it ends up being very metaphysical.
Well, and see, I don't mean when I say spiritual, I don't mean Christian or Islam or Buddhism or Hindu. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about religion
right.
institutions. religious institutions. I'm talking about, to me, there's been more of an acceptance of. It's almost like a change, a paradigm shift, really, to where people they're maintaining their scientific approach, but they're not. Before, if you had said, like, take Sodom and Gomorrah for example, I remember that when they came out, I read this scientific article about an astronomical event, like maybe an exploding, maybe in the what is it, when meteorites or whatever
supernova or meteor. Okay, yeah.
Well, they how when a meteor comes in and explodes above the ground.
Yep.
And what's the Tunguska?
Exactly, Tunguska is a great example.
Yeah, that kind of thing happened over. Now I think they basically scientifically said in that area that basically something like that happened.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that I remember when that came out, that a couple of scientists were like, "Well, gee, maybe this is where the biblical event, comes from, or the account of it,
right?
Comes, And so, anyway, I just thought it was interesting to start to see when you the only reason that you see that publicly is because that particular scientist is thinking about it.
Well,
right?
I just find it super interesting. Like I said, I took a very sound physics approach to it, and there are dimensional alignments every 2029 years that correlate exactly to the the coming of, well, the last one was like the coming of Jesus and the coming of the age of the Pisces, and we are at the coming of the age of Aquarius, and potentially another dipping of the golden chain, like, meaning whatever that means. It's very exciting.
Yeah, some sort of ascension to right.
Well, also potentially the reincarnation of a 2,000-year cycle. Yeah, and so that's why when I say that the Star of David, I say that potentially it could have even have been a syzygy effect of the four outer rings of perception, which would only occur like every 2,000 years. You would have an alignment of dimension, and it would be pulling our universe into this experience where literally it lets another dimension fall within our experience, and we can perceive, you could say, a light at the top of certain places.
I mean, you have some people who think that these things are mechanical, like the Antikythera mechanism,
right? Yeah.
Right, and that there's no like sort of metaphysical. There's nothing metaphysical to it. It's just sort of a physical phenomenon. But I think those people secretly want to think on a different plane. They're still kind of stuck in they're still in a point in their life where they don't want to think about the spiritual aspect of it.
Well, the more we get into the quantum world of reality, I mean, we are quantum species. We work in 5G. We've got computer chips. The quantum nature of reality is just becoming more and more evident. So just the whole like things blipping in and out of solidity. What they haven't done yet is literally map the quantum world, right? And so that's the next step. And I think the mapping of the quantum world can be done through gyroscopes of different density, because each the way I see it is that a gyroscope processes because it's synchronizing with the incoming energy that creates it. And so if you have a less dense object, it will have a different synchronization than a more dense object. And so there's going to be synchronizations related to the actual manifestation of a spinning object. And that's what creates precession. So I think by understanding the relationship of gyroscopes and how they precess with the actual materials that create them, we can start to map the quantum world and have a better idea as well.
When you say map it, you're not talking about, I mean, because we have a pretty decent understanding of particles, right? Muons and quarks. And
I don't know if they do have a really good understanding. I mean, they have
Well, I mean, we understand that like muons are really dense, right? I mean, they have some understanding of,
yeah.
of subatomic particles.
I guess when I say map it, more look for the actual like bigger structures, like because the way I draw it up in this book, basically I draw one big giant center, and that all of our energy is coming from that one big center. But that's not really a realistic view. There's most likely multiple centers, and there's most likely multiple flows. And so if you wanted to actually make a map of all the different flows, you could do that by setting up a system of gyroscopes. Would be very challenging, and it would require like a good system, but I think it could be done. That's where we're at. I think is we need to understand the quantum world, and so we need to create a map of it, and to see like where the actual orbits exist at.
Very interesting, sir.
Yeah, but
I always like talking with you about this stuff. I have a hard time sometimes being a part of the conversation because my mind is wandering off into your world.
you're wandering off into a vortex of my delusions.
Yeah, it's all your fault.
No, that's what's crazy to me is that like I've said, I've tried to remain completely free of delusion my entire life, and I've written this from deep meditations. And I'll just go ahead and say it. If you guys have ever heard of the thing called the Law of One, there's a lot of correlations to that. I would say it's very, very similar. It 100% relates to Egyptian technology and like the type of technology and information that they were using to actually create those structures. So I think it's a pretty big deal.
We should do we don't call these shows. We should do a meeting. What do we call our little things? Whatever it is, we should get together again and talk about just that. Law of One.
The relation. That's where like I said, I've tried to remain as dumb as possible. So I don't want to like do a whole bunch of research on a topic and then meet up. And I'd rather almost meet up with someone that already knows or has already done a whole bunch of research and try to relate it to what I've seen and things of that nature.
Who is that person, I wonder?
Graham Hancock. I don't know if we'd get him. He'd be like the guy to get. I mean, as far as like Egyptian, you know what I'm saying, right? Like,
yeah, no, yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to think of, yeah, and you might be better. Some people might respond better to you than me because the really highly intellectual people don't respond well to Tennessee carpenters. They just
right. Well, I would have to write a delusional email.
I've had a hard time. Yeah, I've had a hard time. Some people don't respond to my requests.
I do that. So I give lectures, right? And I do they're like hour-long lectures in front of like classrooms, and I'll start off the lecture in my suit and tie, and then I'll take off my jacket, and then I'll put on my skate case t-shirt, and then I look chill, and then I'll take off my, and then I'll put on my collared shirt. That's my engineering shirt, and I sit up straight, and then I basically show them the delusion, right? And by the end of it, I'm wearing my hard hat and a yellow t-shirt, and I'm the same guy. I'm the same. I'm human in these different positions, but like, so when I write this email, for example, to whoever, like Graham Hancock or whoever, I have to literally put on I'm a successful engineer and I do this podcast and I would love to have and so people always play these fractal games of delusion and expectation, and so it's hard to ever be real, right, when people are always playing these games. And that's part of my point that I give in my lectures.
Well, and this guy, I want to get Ray Kronos on. I don't know if he would ever do it, but he's an intellectual, but he's also a down to earth guy. I like him.
Yeah, I mean, because it has a lot to do with like what you were saying earlier. It's like some people don't respond well to you, right? And whatever you were saying, like what you were just saying,
Yeah.
You have to put on a certain outfit.
He said, sure, that would be fun, Ray. That would be awesome. Yeah. Ray, he has a lot of experience in different, he helped develop some programs at NASA, and he's a scientist. And one way he's helped me, I've lost 30 pounds over the past year, is his thoughts on, I love the way he approaches, intake of food, which has really helped me try to conquer my delusions.
Right. That's what I was about to say. That's one of those cycles, right?
Yeah, it's one of
You even said.
I consider it.
Yeah.
I consider it, habitual.
Yeah. So
it's
I mean,
it's one of those delusions that we justify very easily. We have to eat, right?
yeah, that
We have to
well,
get
a
that.
guy who's actually a really good example that I that I relate to. Wim Hof. Have you ever heard of him? The
Oh
ice.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, the guy who goes and jumps off into
Yeah.
the
So
ice.
he's
Yeah.
really good at conquering delusion,
Oh,
right?
he would be. Yeah, yeah.
So well, that's the whole idea. So that was like the trainings that I've kind of had growing up. It was always kind of like go outside on the coldest day, literally with no shirt on, just some shorts, and just don't get goosebumps, right? Like what you control your mind, you control your heat. You're gonna walk out there and not get goosebumps. And so I've been practicing that since I was like it's the same stuff that very similar. And so
Ray
it's
says Ray. This is the one thing about Ray Kronos. He knows all these people. He said, "Women and I are good friends." That's awesome.
that's why I brought them up. And so
Yeah.
basically,
Oh, did you know that?
no, well, come on, synchronicity. It's the physics of love.
Why am I asking you that?
We all just know.
Yeah.
And so the point being, though, that's really cool. If we could talk to Mr. Wim Hof, that would be awesome. That would be a lot of fun as well. But so he would actually be a great person to talk about as far as controlling the delusion and using your ego to steer your, you could say, mind, body, spirit distortion into like your strengthness, and to always be in your golden spot where you create the experience you're undergoing. He might have a different approach, as far as like speaking about it.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
excited to hear Ray would come on, because he would be a very good person.
I'm looking forward to that too.
He's been through a lot of these. He's created and conquered many delusions, I would say.
Yeah. And so that was like one of the delusions, whatever. And so like another one, so like, being able to control your temperature, being able to control your breath, right? So holding my breath for a long time and going underwater was something like apnea, was something I've been practicing my whole life as well. And then like, there was one time I was practicing, I was only under for like 4 minutes, but I was at a hotel swimming pool and everyone started getting really worried and panicky. They started like surrounding the pool, worried I drowned, stuff like that. And so they like got me up. But so there's all these different practices you can do to remove delusion as well. Yeah.
I don't know how this person is. Why there's some crazy person in the chat trying to get us involved with girls, online strippers without clothing. What in the world?
That's a delusion right there.
I have never been attacked by these people before. It's funny. Yeah, that is it's just when I remember that when I first met you and you were talking about the concepts of the philosophy behind the delusions. I was like, now some people are going to think you're being sarcastic. You're being you're Tom Cruise or something. You're a Scientologist and you're trying to destroy psychiatry or something.
Right.
But you know what I mean? But they're not thinking about the word delusion I don't think in the proper way. They're not being objective about it.
Right.
And then once you become objective about the word delusion, then you realize that you're suffering from many delusions on a daily basis.
Well, yeah. And so it's different though, because I mean, before you're even born, you could say you're free of delusion. And so even just it depends on your perspective, right? From a fifth dimensional view, having any type of 4D experience is a delusion. So I'm not sure who that is, but it's probably pretty cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, search metabolic winter hypothesis. Search metabolic winter hypothesis. It's not in our mind. It's part of our evolutionary past. Well, see, that's what's funny. This is what's weird. And the reason I kept asking when I first met you to come on here and talk about this stuff is because there was something very familiar about what you were saying, and I couldn't put my finger on it. It's almost like we have these concepts or philosophies built in, but we don't. Part of our delusion has been to be blocked. We're blocked from the thinking.
Well, that's
We're
where
not
I think,
blocked from it. We just don't. It's not part of our psyche or something. And
yeah, I think we already know this. We all have a subconscious growth. Like I'm saying, like as you spiral towards your golden spot, you literally increase in awareness and strength. And it's like as a human, we start to learn skills. You learn to crawl, right? And then you learn to walk, and then you learn to run. But since we live in fractals of delusion, where all you have to ever be able to do is get a job and get money.
Okay, here's a question before I forget. Okay, you remember earlier I said there must be something in our DNA that keeps us from passing on this knowledge to our children, right?
Right.
So at what point, at what awareness level or radius do you have to be to be either remember or be able to absorb or become objective in that manner? Because I've noticed that, again, some humans are not, they're not thinking, they won't think on that level. They won't. And I'm afraid to keep using the word objective, but objectivity, it really is all I can think of, because once you start to think, once you start to analyze yourself, then you can allow yourself to be objective about your delusions.
That's a
Right?
good question. And I think it comes down to the length of your delusion. For example, if you're an addict and you need like your fix or whatever, like every 30 minutes, then you'll only see 30 minutes into the future. And so if you're connected to, you could say, as a child, you already know just like what you're going to do your entire life. And you literally blind faithfully follow your heart and your dreams throughout your entire life. That would be like almost the biggest flow of reality in a way. And you wouldn't have ever got caught up in doubt or spirals of, delusion and stuff like that. You never would have strayed from your path. It's really hard to describe.
Well, and I joke about choosing a different container the next time around, but I did know when I was a child that I always wanted to build things. It's just like, no, I'm not going to do, and no.
Well, I've always had the vision
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this.
It sounds weird, but I've always had the vision of like meditating, obtaining physics and knowledge, and then building spaceships to go to the moon. So it's almost like we all complete our expectations, right? We create our expectation, we create our reality in a way, and then they all synchronize to create one structure. The problem is when they get so far off from each other that they can't synchronize, that's when you get all kinds of friction. And the dissolving needs to happen. But yeah.
Well, I'm gonna email or text Ray. When can we get together again? I'm gonna see when we can get him, because you would really enjoy talking with him.
We probably have an interesting conversation.
Oh yeah. I'll just be talking with him, and he'll say, "Oh yeah, we created the internet back in." He'll say something completely that is I would never expect from him, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So people, and he's one of those types of people, kind of like you, who don't exploit or flaunt their intellectual ability. You kind of share it and surprise people with it.
Yeah,
which I enjoy about people.
Well, so that has to do with it's like a trick. It's not a trick, right? When it comes to the easiest way to put it, like teaching someone a trick, like in Taekwondo, if you're in front of a whole bunch of white belts and you're a black belt, you don't want to like, all right, class, ready? Let's jump 360, spin heel kick, go. You do a front kick with them, and you do it all kinds of slow, and you probably, you work with them. Do you know what I'm saying? You work with them.
And that's kind of like Ray has influenced me with my delusion about eating. He didn't preach to me. He had written several books, right? He's an expert on the matter. And then,
right.
But he didn't treat me like a client, right? He treated me like a friend. So as we would go along, the things he would say would rub off on me.
Yep. It's a big difference.
I think that's a great approach for people.
Yeah. And so, and like when I was teaching people skateboard tricks too, it's like, I'm not even allowed to do the move that's more complicated than the one that they're trying to do until they get it right. You know, like it's like we're all a team and we're all rising as one. And so it's like once that person can kickflip, now I can kickflip as well, is how it works. And it has to do with confidence building, and like you don't want people to like feel as if they can't connect or they don't have the knowledge or the, you know what I'm saying? Like we're all one team and we're all working together to learn and grow. It never has to do with anything being against someone or anyone trying to get, you know what I'm saying, right? Like,
yeah, no, I understand. Yeah.
Because I mean, everybody sees things differently. There's no question. Yeah.
That's part of the
challenge.
That's part of the that's part of your awareness, right?
Well, yes. I mean, that's
why
when you're on the top of the mountain, in quotes, you can see into the valleys. So
right.
when you're connected with the greatest flows of the reality, you can see into the spirals or the delusions of others. And from that point of view, you can literally use your posture control to reach into their delusion and pull them out.
I think
go ahead.
It's really strange too, because you know, at some level of, and this is going to sound crazy, at some level, it's almost, you know, these people who could, like Edward Casey or whatever, you know, the people who almost could predict the future weren't really necessarily predicting the future, not as if they had seen it, but as if they understood humanity to the extent, right?
It's
that they could predict it based on their awareness or their forward vision.
Yeah, forward vision. You could say collective consciousness of humanity, or like the future as if no one were to change anything. Like if you can just jump out of delusion, now all of a sudden you've changed the future.
Right. That's the problem with time travel.
Exactly. But like, so what I think they're more so seeing is the 99.99999% most probable outcome. I'm not going to say it's it's 100% the future, because there is that choice of, you know, free will, mind, body, spirit.
And the banking on the slowness of the evolution of humankind, you know, right? If you like, for me, we were talking about this earlier, how you've already said that in, you know, December 21st, 2012, that some phase started. And for me, I was going, how can that be? We're still fighting over whether Trump was elected or not. You know what I mean? How can that be? I predict that we haven't got to that. You know what I mean?
That we haven't hit the friction.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, how can that be? I'm just asking. I don't see where there's so much division, you know, among people. You know, I understand that there's the Antikythera mechanism that says we're supposed to be there at this point in time. But that's why I was kind of bringing up the point about whether it's mechanical or whether the phases can change. The due date can change based on man's actual actions, or you know,
that's a good question.
Maybe a number of delusions can slow the process down or something.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, right? If a natural delusion spins clockwise and everybody decides to run counterclockwise, you can slow something down.
Right.
I'm just speaking theoretically, right? If you're rotating something this way and you slow it,
right? Or if it is, I hate to keep using that, but I keep having this vision of gears, you know, and you're spinning this, you know, and that if things are that interconnected, then
that is pretty much how it works, though, with like you're saying, the gears and everything spins, and
but some things spin, you know, depending on the size of.
Well, the problem is when this one stops spinning, it slows down the spinning of the others, and so these like all spin harder and harder and harder and harder until they finally spin, and then the other one spins with it. So it's like it's the synchronization of all those different things, and so like realistically, everyone rises as one. The whole system spins as one.
But under that example, though, they could never become synchronized.
Which example? What do you mean?
Well, take the Antikythera mechanism.
Well, once
the
you're
reason it's able to predict certain outcomes is because of the fact that the wheels turn at different rates. Right?
Well, they all turn at different rates.
Yeah.
Yeah. They all turn at different rates, but they all turn in harmony, right? And all the rates
They're
are related
connected.
to they're all related to the greater wheel of time or whatever. But yeah, so basically the way I see it is that there was an experience that started at the end of 2012, and that it basically created a liquefaction of all of the mind, body, spirit complexes, and that a golden chain is being dipped into the conscious awareness to create an ascension process.
Well, and that doesn't depend. You're saying that process doesn't depend on humanity.
No, because there's interdimensional alignments that are just naturally.
Okay, so that makes okay. Now I'm on board, because if it did,
no, yeah,
I would definitely be doubting.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
right.
Well, I'm saying that the dimensional alignments happen every 2,000 years.
It doesn't rely on performance. Our performance.
It relies on our harmony. As far as the inner rings being able to continue to manifest and exist, because
where is this harmony though?
That's what's coming, because right now we're having a melting.
Okay, so it's coming. Okay, good.
Yeah,
okay.
No, we've our delusions, or our mind, body, spirit distortions, are being melted right now.
I'm sorry, I get it.
Yeah, so basically we had solidified through our delusions that we had been born into. Now they've all become liquefied and melted because of all of the, COVID stuff, the equality movements, the what was the other one? Literally the government telling people what to think, right? UAP are real. No, they're not. So people don't, people are so like disconnected from reality. And so there's been a liquefaction, you could say, of the distortions, of the mind, body, spirit distortions. And by just normal physics here, any physics, when you drop a seed crystal into a liquid, substrate, and then you lift the seed crystal, the material will harden to take the characteristics of the seed crystal. And so by dropping in a golden chain into a molten mind, body, spirit complex, you can literally recrystallize the entire consciousness of all of humanity, is what I'm getting at. Yeah. But first, they all need to become liquefied.
Well, and what's the growth rate of the crystals?
Right. Well, that's what I talk about, cooling rates in relation to.
Okay.
Like that growth, crystal size in relationship to cooling rates.
Because you could say all of the extremists are on the periphery, and the crystals are making their way to the outer.
That's pretty much what's happening, right? And then when it comes to just metals cooling, right, then you get rust on top, and that'll just kind of you gotta wipe that off. And so some of the stuff won't properly crystallize, and it gets. What is this?
The delusion is using the language of science to describe non-scientific garble.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, Ray is a scientist, so he has a certain biases.
Well, you got to touch, taste, smell, and feel it. If not, it's not real.
Non-scientific garble.
Right. Well, I talk about that a little bit, where we all are living within our delusion, and it's hard to find a scientist that will not find what they're looking for, because we create biased examples. Okay. When you have fluid batch of metal, and then you get it with a torch, scat comes to the top.
That's true.
That's what I'm talking about, and that's solid. So we'll just move forward from there.
I may have to remove some delusions to get you all on the same in the same hangout together.
Well, we're going to be speaking the same language but different words.
Yeah,
because we're talking reality, and there's only one reality, right? So, yeah.
Well, and so I guess you could, if I took my objectivity to the extreme, I could say that when you say something and it's familiar to me, that doesn't mean I necessarily understand it. It just means that it's familiar, right? So
Right.
if Ray comes on and he says, no, it's this, and you say, no, it's that, then I have at some point, have to, each person has to kind of develop an understanding. I mean, I don't see that. So anyway, I'm sorry, I'm garbling now. Scientific process to distinguish between, yeah. Well, yeah, I know, but I love science. I always wanted to be a scientist when I was. If I wasn't going to be a builder, I wanted to be a scientist. I had a microscope, a cheap microscope. I had I would go out. We had a pond near our house. I would go out and get pond water and put it and watch the amoebas and the parameciums wander around in there. And then I realized that my brain was more suited for building things.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of basically, what was it? The original. I have it right here, actually.
What we believe, and see, this is what I'm trying to get people. It's like when I see these UFO shirts that say "I believe," it's like I want to say I want to change that to.
Has
Oh,
nothing
it's
to do
no.
with
If they say I'm a believer, I want to change it to I'm a thinker. Not a
I'm a
believer.
believer. That's good. So right
Yeah.
here, this is the last line of the discussion in a way, and it says, "You cannot teach a worm politics, and you definitely cannot fully explain the universe and all of its mysteries, life and death, through quantifications." So at a certain point, we have to understand, right, that it's not all touch, taste, smell, hear, repeatable. We have to look
Observation.
We have to look past the physical observation and observable universe.
Yeah, that's the only.
And if not,
I mean, scientists have some of the biggest biases that exist, right?
Scientists have the hugest bias. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not downing science. I'm not, and I'm on Ray's side.
And it's
I
really
believe
cool
in the scientific process. We only as humans. That's all we really have, right? We have to form our thinking based on. But see, I say that, but then when I talk to you about some of this philosophy that you have, and it's very familiar to me, I think, we're missing something.
There's a huge.
That's not the point.
Well, that's where science gets more. Science gets closer and closer to reality.
That's why you have to come on, Ray, with this.
That's what he's getting at right now. Is basically the more advanced science gets, the closer it gets to proving through science that consciousness has a direct effect on matter, and things like what I'm talking about.
But if we didn't have science to back that up, it would be garble, as Ray would say.
That is, garble sounds like bad. Like that's a bunch of garble.
No, that's what I'm saying. Some scientists would say, "Well, I can't observe consciousness. Or I can't whatever." Scientists aren't the scientific process. No, but they practice it. I'm just trying to get rid of the.
Yeah, they create a theory, a hypothesis, and then they create experiments, and then they do experiments to try to prove or disprove a hypothesis. And so what they've done is created a delusion, and then created more delusions to prove the delusion. So it has a lot to do with actually understanding the difference between how you manifest the world versus the physical world that's already manifested. So when you're born into fractals of delusion to begin with, right? That's you guys. That's basically science saying these are the rules.
You guys.
Scientists. I mean,
I know. I'm just kidding.
You guys, you scientists.
Ray's going to jump through his computer. Get you. No, it's not. It's illusion. It's a delusion to say that. Since you're not here, I don't know what you're referring to. It's a delusion to say what? Because there's a lag, and we're saying 2 or 3 different things, and we don't know what you're talking about necessarily. But the thing about it is, I mean, so what did Z-Mog say? It depends on how the science is applied or directed. Well, it's not the scientist I mean, in my view, it's not the scientist's job to direct it, or right. It's just to
Science should be unbiased. When
it
this
should.
happens, this happens. Science should be very factual. There should be no I believe when it comes to science. There are no beliefs in science.
It publishes the
There's no room
test
for
data,
faith and good
right?
intentions in science. Like, I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, you publish your test data, and then the capitalism takes over.
I literally say that right here. It's like there's no room for faith or belief in science, right? It's very testable, provable. That's what's you're messing with the material realm only.
Where did you read that from?
Oh, that's right here. I have it all read out. It's called A Shift in Natural Selection. And basically it talks about how humans originally were more spiritual, but through the advent of literally instilled delusions, we've become more scientific. So as advanced technology blossoms, you could say that we've gotten to a point where money equals food. And because money equals food, people don't actually evolve fully. And because they don't evolve fully, they're stuck in the material plane. And basically, we get to a point where there's science.
What's the book? What's that book?
Science versus faith is the point right here. And then it says that, in a spiritual type of view, basically, there's room for faith. Good beliefs actually means something. Caring about your friend means something. In a scientifically dominated spirit, basically, there's no room for faith. There's no room for beliefs. There's no room for anything but following the infrastructure. And so it's important to understand that in a scientific dominated spirit, that you don't care as much about the person next to you.
I think I look at scientists as like the captain of the ship. They've got their hand on the, they're steering it, but they're just trying to point it in a direction.
I've built silicone, CMOS transistors on wafers. I worked on Project Apollo at Apache Point in New Mexico. I have, over 100 hours on the SBO. So, Summers Bosch Observatory in University of Colorado. As far as scientific method, I'm very well aware of scientific method. And that's why I think if you read Your Influence in Space, you'll see that I literally take you step by step to show that the universe literally is not expanding. Our perceptions are being stretched and crunched based off of a greater accelerative reference frame. And you'll see that the Big Bang was the moment our universe collided with the structure of time.
I will say this, that scientists weren't that much on board publicly with this whole UAP thing until we created this government office to make it seem more legitimate, right?
Yeah.
At what point did we have people like Avi Loeb and those kind of guys coming, changing their tune? You go from Bill the Science Guy to Avi Loeb in a few years.
Yeah. It comes down to when there's someone who actually publicly releases technology and they're traveling through the dimensions of density.
I shouldn't have said Bill Nye. He's not a scientist. But anyway, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I go step by step from modern accepted relativity to what I talk about. So it's not like there's any question for me because I'm literally using our accepted science and physics and theories of evolution. Like I'm using scientific method to describe exactly everything I'm doing. So that's why
Ray's using the word delusion as I was saying that when I first met you.
Oh yeah, that's not what delusion is.
Yeah, I when I first met you, I was very interested. I don't know if you remember that. I chuckled when you use the word delusion, and I was like, people are going to misunderstand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I thought it was kind of funny, but then I realized it's not funny. It's very interesting, And in my mind, I was laughing, but then I thought, wait a minute, you kind of take a new approach to this word delusion.
Yeah, well, I mean, a delusion is a fractal of someone's creation, and that can be anything from a simple skateboard to an entire structure like the scientific method. And I know that, That's why
I think what's hard for scientists are
it's hard to see that you exist within one to remove yourself from it.
you can't tell me, Ray, that someone like Elon Musk or even Alexei here are not people with vision, that can see beyond current science or that can predict beyond current science. What is what what is science if it isn't being able to predict the unknown at some point, right? All you're really doing is, you have admitted to me before that some of your thoughts. Well, you didn't say this. I thought you were saying it. That sometimes you will be talking about your book or a chapter, and you'll just say it came to me or something like that,
Right.
or you saw a vision, or it came to you, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's not science, but it doesn't mean it's not that you didn't observe it.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, it goes literally step by step through, modern accepted relativity to understanding that we have a mind, body, spirit, and we live in a quantum universe, to basically the moment of the Big Bang and how there's rings of perception, and through the harmonization of our consciousness and the different densities of experience, we can consciously experience the different realms. There's nothing in these 4 books that's woo. Then you go into the 5th dimension that also shows the physics behind consciousness and interdimensional travel. So I mean, there's really nothing that's actually non-scientific in this entire conversation. That's why I don't understand. It comes down to, can we actually make technologies now to use these theories, very scientifically, well thought out theories, to actually move forward?
Here's an example of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I don't get it.
You had Louis Elizondo telling us that they had materials, right? Exotic materials. Right now, some scientists wouldn't even test those if you told them that.
Right.
You would have to submit that material to them and say, will you test this? And not even tell them what it is. Because some scientists, if you told them what you thought it was, they wouldn't test it.
Well, that's what I was talking about earlier. When I have to write an email, right? You have to put on a certain suit and tie, and you're going to write your email wearing your ego that fulfills their delusion. Because if you don't fulfill their delusion of what is acceptable, they won't even communicate with you. So you literally have to put on your I'm a master's in mechanical engineering, and I've got this, and I have my company, and I've been to here this many times. Will you talk to me? It's like, why do I even have to do that? And that's the delusion that I'm pushing onto someone before they even start to listen. And the fact that you even have to do that is the problem. People only listen to people with these titles that are all fractals of someone else's delusion to begin with. Because I can start, because ultimately the universities, they've grown from foundations, and science has grown from foundation. But at the end of the day, it's some guy giving some guy a plaque. It's a fractal of a delusion. It's like it's like when I'm a martial arts instructor, and I give little Bobby a gold star because he kicked the pad 5 times. Like, at a certain point, it's all just like made up, feel good kind of things, and they are fractals of the greater delusion, which is the universe or God, right? Whichever flow you want to talk about it. And that's where science has a really hard time talking about God, things like that, or the greatest flow of reality. So that's why when you start to talk about dimensional alignments and you talk about the greatest flows of reality in that sense, scientists can now actually go back and look at it in a touchable, tastable way to where it makes sense to them. And so that's where you have those different layers of experience. We have dimensional alignments. We literally have one every 185 days, another one every 2,029 years. The next one is every 8.1 million years. And these are all dimensional alignments in the dimension of conscious density, the 5th dimension of experience. Yep. That's my rant. I'm good.
No, I was trying to find.
It is scientific. That's why I don't understand why this is even being questioned.
Well, here's this guy. I was going to bring this. I want to screen share for a second. Share, screen share, screen share. Now, I'll have to do a tab. Sorry. I'm going to screen share. I promise. Chrome tab. Come on, say something while I'm looking. Here it is. There's dead air. Okay, so I want Ray to see this. Is he watching? Okay, so we know about Avi Loeb, right? Frank B. Barry Jr., professor of science, Harvard astronomy, right? This girl, she has a BSE in civil engineering, professor, department, astrophysical science, Princeton University, undergraduate student, Harvard graduate, whatever, PhD student,
Have you ever
postdoctoral
checked
assistant.
Marty talking about this?
This is the guy where I was working with on the stuff I was volunteering on. This Alex,
Right.
mechanical engineer, Caltech. Okay, these are real scientists, right? These are the real good dudes, and the reason they're coming on board is because of some phenomenon that has happened in the scientific community. Let me remove that now. That has removed some delusions.
I love that. I knew you. Okay, I wasn't sure if you were going there, but I'm glad you did.
No, that's what I'm saying. There's Clover Tag. Hey, Clover Tag, just stopped by to say Merry Christmas. I guess I don't want. I know where Ray's coming from, but I also want him to know that there are real scientists looking at this now.
But I like how you framed it though, because they weren't looking at it until the government said that it was real. So why weren't they looking at it before?
It was almost like the government challenged them to say, and they're like, "Oh, reality, you're saying it's for real, but we want to know it's and so what if it was a challenge, right? Anything to remove the stigma, to remove the taboo for science, right? Anything for me to remove that is a good thing."
Oh, I think it's a great thing. It's a great thing that everybody's more aware and more welcoming of it. But I just want to emphasize though, like, that people should be more like aware that it only became okay after the government said it was okay. That already should be like sending people into like that whole like, what else have I just been like blindly following my entire life kind of thing.
And I think some of these people, like Eric Weinstein, may have been read into some things.
Right. I don't know.
Some of these people, I think they have been, which is a little concerning. But some of the people I'm surprised with, right, and the numbers of people. But the guy, I'm just telling you, the guy that I have worked with, this Alex, he's a French dude. I can't pronounce his last name. Okay. This guy is nothing but science. He's not.
Yeah, but
there hasn't been one word of woo or anything else. It's all here's a tool we're trying to create to take a measurement of something. Right.
Yeah,
that's all. There hasn't been any word of any kind of. But I just want Ray to know that, because it's all for them. It's all science, 100%. That's it.
And I've had my work somewhat confirmed in a way. I'm just gonna put it that way.
Are you gonna tease people?
I wouldn't be like saying what I'm saying out here if I wasn't pretty confident in my work.
And I'm not trying to be some moderator between you and Ray, but I'm saying that I think eventually those people will come to similar conclusions that you've come to.
Well,
They just,
yeah. I mean,
they just need science to get them there. I
once
think
you
that's
sit
what it is.
still and truly explore what it is to experience, and truly explore what science has to say too, and you put them together, you get to where the answer is. And
I think some people just need an experience.
right.
Even the small experiences I have had that aren't explainable, and I've shown you some of these things.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to show them to the world because I don't know what they are, and I don't want to present them as something that they are. I'm just saying that some people have had experiences that have elevated their thinking to a point to where they're
Well,
ready to either
where does the
supercharge the
government get their
science.
information from? Let me just, like, who does the government talk to when they get their information?
Well, I mean,
That's all.
they've been studying this for 70 years, right?
Right. Well, they have tools, they have data, but they don't have the actual focal conscious experience unless they talk to the observer.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's true. I get your point.
And so
Yeah.
what the government knows is actually what a collection of civilian knowledge. If you want to be
Right.
like,
And that's why I was so excited about the Galileo project, because it's a private, it's a, right. It's not government funded. It's a private, what am I trying to say? It's a private organization with a goal to discover.
yeah, I think that's pretty cool. I think, again, though, that's already a fractal of delusion, and to have to listen to what they say is creating an issue. The connection is you to the universe, and I can't be more straightforward about that.
I get it, but can't people practice science on their way to that understanding?
Of course,
It's
but
like,
to say that science is the answer,
no, no,
it
no.
doesn't even know what gravity is yet.
If I ever said that, I didn't mean that.
Well, no, that's
I'm trying to understand people like Ray and these other guys who will never be able to see anything. Not Ray. I think he's a different breed of scientist. But I think there are some scientists who will never who will have to basically be able to put those chemicals in a test tube and stick a litmus paper in there and it come out a certain color before they see anything, before they believe anything.
right. No, I get that, and I understand that too. And I come from a very scientific background, so I understand.
Well, I know you do, and
Yeah.
that's why I find all this so interesting.
No, I took offense in
Yeah.
college. People are like, "Oh, you're studying astrology?" I'd be like, "No, man, I study astronomy. I'm a
Yeah.
real scientist. I'm studying astro. I'm not doing astrology."
Can you read tarot cards for me?
Yeah, I don't do tarot. What are you guys talking about? But then it's like, once you actually move forward into your knowledge of what's happening, it's like, okay, well, there is some relationship to your location, the incoming state of the universe, and how we live in a liquid light state universe, right? And well, there's actually rings of perception. We're orbiting a greater structure, right? And well, no, the universe isn't really expanding, perception's being stretched. It's all perception, and it's a fluid, it's a raw energy of experience, and we have a consciousness going through it at the end of the day. That's the most raw way to think about it, and everything comes from that.
Well, and an objective person should hear that and say, there has to be some truth to that.
Yep.
That's what I did when I first met you, and I was like, there's a familiarity to the things you've said, and I don't know what it is, and I think we're going to eventually find out what it is. And it may be that we are being allowed, our consciousness is being allowed to understand on a different level as we go forward.
No, and I think science, like, honestly, science is really, really cool, but it can be extremely limiting when it comes to the innovative process and like creating artwork. Like, to an artist, you don't want to follow science. Like cartoons, they don't follow scientific law and gravity, typical physics. So when it comes to like creating and thinking outside the box in ways that result in actual new change, you need to be more fluid with the thinking.
Yeah, when I think of, it's kind of funny. I always hate to use these construction analogies so much, but I'm in that world. So it's like the difference between, I think Ray and I have even talking about this, the difference between Roman concrete and modern concrete. The Romans really, I mean, they had it down that, they still have structures, and structures still exist. But what science did was take that invention and make it so that we can use it in different ways, right? It improved it. It improved the technology. So I guess the analogy I'm trying to bring is that if we don't understand something, it doesn't mean that we can't analyze it. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
It's just as much of a sin to deny or to say something doesn't exist without being able to prove it doesn't exist.
What's
Right.
challenging is to understand that we're constantly being manifested like a million times a second. Right? We're being manifested from the ether, you could say. And when it comes to a delusion that you create from a point of true zero, that's where like people don't really understand what a true zero is, a place of no mind, no body, no experience. And you're constantly being manifested. In order to only believe in science, now you have to like literally go into a delusion, which is your dream state. It is your physical four-dimensional experience. You have to go into that and use science to then prove it. You've created a spiral of delusion with the shift in mind that you create yourself. From a point of zero, now you're saying, here's my delusion. Now I must spiral through the scientific method in order to ever see anything different. That's why I'm saying it's really hard to actually free yourself from these delusions that you are born into, that we have been taught to be. I'm a Democrat, I think this way. I have this much money, I think this way. I'm this color skin, I think this way. Um, the layers add up to being basically a giant Stanford prison guard experiment to where literally you're fulfilling the expectations of your delusion. Um, and so that is very similar with starting from a point of zero and then having to use the scientific method to solve the answer.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is the self-fulfilling prophecy. It is exactly what that's you'll always find what you're looking for. And so you have a delusional person out there looking for something, they will always find it.
I don't mean to laugh, but I just love that. I love these analogies because it's
Yeah, no,
so
I think
real. They're so real
yeah,
that it's humorous to me.
it's not just
Humans are
science.
funny to
I mean, if you want to
me.
find a bad person, you can go. You have the delusion there's bad people everywhere. That's what you're gonna find. And it's almost like
Yeah.
I forget what TV show it was, but it's like The Miracle or something like that, where the guy's like, you create your experience through the vibration and the assumptions you hold true. And it is pretty much true. Like you literally create the world around you based off of your wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations. And it's not that you create it, but you're harmonizing to it through that fifth dimensional structure of experience. Yep. The quantum entanglement nature of reality, you know.
Well, I could go all night, but I gotta go take a bath and get all this smoke and soot off of me from clearing the lot today.
No, that was a good conversation. I
No,
think
I like it.
yeah. No, I like getting into it too because like I said, I used to be very, very not like very, very scientific, but I was never astrological. Let me put it that way. And
I can never see that in you. I don't know how anybody would think that.
because I'm an astronomer, so all of a sudden I
Well,
do zodiac signs. It's like no, I don't. No, I study actually the planets and planetary science and orbits.
that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, how
Yeah,
we've assigned animal, some meaning, to a
right.
group of stars were in the shape of a dipper. So somehow it means something.
I always thought it was super silly. Like all
Yeah.
that stuff is silly to me. But
You know,
the more you actually
perspective,
get
right?
in, the more you get into like physics and you follow, you could say the rabbit hole of reality, the more truth there is behind the whole alignments and things of that nature. So it's just really interesting to take a look at. Yeah.
No, yeah, no, I'm not. Again,
Well, I see you're very open. It's more to like the very close-minded person that is coming from a scientific view. It's like maybe just take a look at it from a different point of view, because you'll
No, and I
probably
think that's
learn
how
a lot.
I know I try to challenge myself like that every day.
Yeah.
Like I had a friend. This was a long time ago. I wouldn't call her a friend, but she read the cards or whatever every night. You know what I mean? She was really into it.
Right.
But and I didn't think of her in a bad way. I thought it was strange, but I didn't think of her. I thought the practice was strange, but I didn't think she was strange.
Well, that's wild
So
too, because the tarot, it's funny you bring that up. That actually circles back to, I think it has to do with like the Egyptian philosophies as well. But before that, it was like it was all kind of done by hand, and then someone created the cards that were used. And I don't know the whole system though. I don't know that thing.
yeah,
But
and one thing I've tried to do is stop doing that thing where you judge people based on your own delusions.
well, yeah, no, I mean, like one of the greatest ones I think too is like, oh, they're from that country. Oh, what?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
It's like I have a friend. His nickname is Warsaw Patriot, and I found myself making Polish jokes.
right,
Now, why am I doing that?
right. And then
Yeah,
you realize it's just like stuff you've been taught like growing up.
yeah.
Like
It's like
they don't even make sense.
it's silly, and so yeah, it's just it's crazy.
Yeah,
Well, thanks,
yeah, no,
Alexei. I appreciate your time and your.
yeah. And I want scientists to look through my work. Like I want them to. So take a
We have to
close
get
look.
Ray.
Like,
I'm gonna have to make
yeah.
a deal with Ray to get him on here a bit.
Yeah,
But
no,
that,
let's take a good
he,
close look at it. Let's really analyze it,
I'll,
let's talk about
and
it.
I'll just be quiet. I want to hear you two talk for an hour. That's
Right.
what
And so that's where I want to develop technologies. That's why I have the interdimensional telescope literally patent pending. Like we can develop technologies based off theoretical physics. Boom. Like
right,
we
right.
can actually develop technologies based
I have never disassociated you with science.
on right.
I have added a layer on top of that.
Yeah, it's cool.
There's a
Thank you.
layer
No,
on top of science.
not everybody sees that at first. They just that they see what they want to see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Well, thanks.
yes, sir.
I'll send you an email. I'll send Ray an email. I'll see when we can. When are you open next?
Uh, Whenever we'll stay in contact.
Okay.
I'll be
All right.
around
Well,
over the holidays and stuff. I'll be available. Yeah.
all right. Well, thanks, Alexei. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right. We'll see you.
See it.
Okay. Thanks, everybody in the comment in the chat. Thank you for watching, and have no idea where the stripper advertisements came from, but that was bizarre. But this challenge goes out to Ray Cronus. You've been challenged, buddy. I'll see you guys.